Welcome to the Church in the Wild podcast. You'll be hearing the words from worship from Sunday, July 13th, where we begin our series on signs in the sky with a discussion on clouds. If you would like to know more about Church in the Wild and our different events and offerings, you can find all the information you need at churchinthewild.org. Thanks for listening.
So this month is about signs from the sky, and if you had any damage from last week's storm, which, I don't know if anybody did here or not, but or lost power. I know people lost power, right?
Yes, 2 days.
For 2 days? Mine was out 5 hours one day and then 5 hours the next day. It was a very unpleasant sign from the sky last week. And I don't know if you've had a chance to drive up Shenango Street at all, through Port Dickinson and Hillcrest area. But holy cow, I was there right after the storm. And even this last week, there were it looks like the work was starting to get done. There were all kinds of repair trucks and things like that. But it looked like a tornado went through, basically. The east side of Binghamton also took a big hit, and so did the area around SUNY Broome in that area, too. Huge trees were down. I saw a couple of collapsed roofs in Port Dickinson, and the siding on the houses, they all looked like they were hit by machine gun fire. It was unbelievable. And all of that was from a nasty cumulonimbus cloud and straight line winds. It was not from a tornado. It's been confirmed that it was not a tornado. So in any thunderstorm, inside those big cumulonimbus clouds that look like mushroom clouds, there's convection taking place. So the tops of the clouds are at high altitudes, and so it's very cold up there. The bottoms of the clouds are warmer, so the warm, humid, moist air rises because it's lighter, and then as it cools off up at the top, it sinks, and you get this current that goes through the cloud, and it's like a wheel, basically. It's not like a elevator. It's like a wheel going around. And the friction from the rising and the sinking air can cause electrical discharges, which is what lightning is, and it also is what forms the hailstones, because it carries the wet droplets up, and then it freezes, and so on like that. So the circulating air, if it started to rotate this way, that's when it becomes a tornado, and that's kind of tricky to predict. You can only know when its conditions are right, but in this case, it stayed like this. It didn't do this, so it wasn't a tornado. But the air was so warm last week and so humid that those updrafts inside the clouds were so extremely strong that they were keeping the hail and the rain droplets suspended near the top of the clouds. They weren't able to do the complete cycle. They were just pushing them up and keeping them up. And so they were getting, the longer they stayed up there and the colder it got, the bigger the hail was getting. They were staying up there for a long time, and so the hailstones got bigger and bigger, and then eventually, getting bigger and bigger, got heavier and heavier, and was able to overcome the updraft. And when that happened, everything pushed down like an elevator going down, and the hail and the rain and the air came out of the bottom of the cloud with a lot of force, a lot more force than in a normal thunderstorm. And the air that goes straight down from those kinds of clouds are called downdrafts, and they're really dangerous because if there's a plane flying in the area or whatever, they can push the plane down quickly, and that can stall planes out. Obviously, they can crash. And sometimes there's no rain involved. There's not even any rain, so it's even harder to detect that they're happening. So when those downdrafts are invisible because there's no rain to see, then they're even more dangerous for planes. But once the downdrafts crash into the surface of the earth, they go this way at hugely fast speeds. So they can go up to 100 miles an hour this way really quickly. And those are called straight line winds, and they've got the force of an F1 to an F2 tornado. So the other thing you may have seen, I saw when I was driving around there, literally the trees just, the trees just broken in half, like toothpicks. They were sitting there. Yeah, right. Well, that's why everyone kept saying, oh, it had to be a tornado. Well, it wasn't a tornado. Straight line winds are the same force as tornado winds, but it was not. They're straight. They still do horrible damage. So, yeah, last week the winds sheared the leaves right off the trees and shredded them. If you saw any of that on the roads, it was like they went through a food processor or something. It was crazy. And now driving down there, there's the whole hillside. It looks like it's November or something because there's no leaves on the trees. It's just, it's over in that, like I said, over in that area behind Otsego Park up Port Dick, Hillcrest way. Yeah, Shenango Street. You can see it from Front Street. Yeah. Yeah. So this time of year, it's really odd to see that. And the fact that these lines are these straight line winds, that's why the damage wasn't just to rooftops and tops of cars, but it broke windows and ripped screens out and destroyed the sides of cars and the siding on the houses because of the direction that the wind was going, and it was going sideways. And also I just was reading something somebody posted about that lived in Morningside Heights near SUNY Broome. The hail was so bad there and going sideways so fast that a lot of people couldn't even open their doors to their house because the ice was just piled up. They had to literally go outside. This one woman said it took her 2 hours to clear the ice away from her door so that she could even open her door. It's just crazy.
Mary Oliver, clouds. All afternoon, sir, your ambassadors have been turning into lakes and rivers. At first, they were just clouds like any other. Then they swelled and swirled. Then they hung very still. Then they broke open. This is, I suppose, just one of the common miracles, a transformation, not a vision, not an answer, not a proof, but I put it there close against my heart where the need is, and it serves the purpose. I go on, soaked through, my hair slicked back like corn or wheat, shining and useful.
I'm Carol. Our wisdom today comes from the Christian scripture Luke 12:54 through 12:56. Jesus also said to the crowds, when you see a cloud forming in the west, you immediately say, it's going to rain. And indeed it does. And when a south wind blows, you say, a heat wave is coming, and it does. Hypocrites, you know how to interpret conditions on earth and in the sky. How is it that you don't know how to interpret the present time? Join me in the response to wisdom in the program. The sky gives us signs about weather, energy, and spirit.
Okay, so signs in the sky, and this week it's clouds. But first I'm going to just give a little an intro or idea of what this series is going to be for the next 3 weeks. We'll be talking about clouds, rainbows, and auroras, and what they might have to tell us about lots of things. What these things in the sky could mean beyond their scientific definition and explanation, because as far as we know, human beings are the only creatures who wonder about these things and who strive to make meaning out of some of the things we see that are unusual or different, seem to have an impact, and we want to, well, so what does that mean? What does that mean for us? And the sky is very important to us. It has always drawn our attention. And after all, the atmosphere is as much a part of this earth as the ground is, or the oceans. The ground, our earth home, is made of the landmass, the oceans, and the sky. We have 6,000 miles if you include the exosphere, which is 5,500 miles big. we have 6,000 miles of atmosphere that belongs to the Earth. And the distance to the Earth's center from the surface is, give or take, whether you're at the poles or the equator, it's a little more in the middle, 3,959 on average. So, well, if you double that for the circumference, or for the diameter, that's 7,000 and some. So we can see that there is as much sky, basically, as land. The atmosphere has 5 layers, counting that exosphere. And the sky has as much impact, as we saw this week, on us as the ground. And together, land, sea, and sky all make our ecosystem. They work together to sustain life in the intricate balance that was created from the beginning and has gone through cycles and phases from the beginning, because our atmosphere is different than it was at the beginning. Now there's more oxygen since plants came around. So for these 3 weeks, we look to the sky, as humans have for millions of years, millennia, and wonder, what does the sky have to tell us? We've talked about stars before and how people have seen shapes and pictures up there in the sky and have derived meaning from them and have even made predictions and forecasts about the times based on what the stars were doing, beyond just the changing months and seasons. But today we're coming much closer down to our own Earth and our daily lives, considering clouds and what they might mean to us beyond the prediction of weather and the seasons. As Jesus reminds us, we know how to interpret the sky and anticipate the weather, but are there signs in the sky to help us interpret what's going on in our world today and in our spirits and our lives today? So let's try to look at clouds from both sides. Barb has given us a very detailed scientific explanation of thunderstorms, severe thunderstorms. And scientifically, clouds are the transformation of matter, of especially H2O, the water molecule. And spiritually, they can be signs of transformation for us, like Mary Oliver, soaking wet after a thunderstorm, feeling maybe washed clean and new and useful. Water becomes vapor as the sun warms the air. The water vapor becomes liquid again as it rises into the cooler parts of the atmosphere and condenses around tiny dust particles. That's what the condensation lands on, these tiny little dust particles. And then it gets bigger and bigger, as Barb said, until it's heavy enough to fall through the updraft. The molecules are then, as they fall to earth as rain, drawn into plants, or they rejoin the rivers and lakes and oceans that they came from. And that's what we call the water cycle, which you probably learned in 4th grade. I think I did, the water cycle. And the water cycle is just transformation of matter, of water molecules, evaporation, condensation, rainfall, and over again. As Mary Oliver put it so poetically, now where did I put, your ambassadors have been transforming themselves into lakes and rivers all day, because they've gone up and it's come back down and joined the rivers. So how might clouds influence spiritual transformation? What can they say to us? Do they serve as a symbol or a vision for us sometimes? Transformation is a thing we all kind of work toward in our spiritual lives. Have you ever looked at the clouds and seen shapes, animals, things, recognizable things, and maybe some strange things. And have you ever wondered, oh, why am I seeing that? Can you remember? Caden can remember some. I was going to say, can you remember any of those clouds you've seen? Our boys used to see dinosaurs. We'd play that game on the way to church. It's 15 miles, but you got to keep them entertained. And they'd see a lot of dinosaurs because they were really into dinosaurs. That's what's on their mind. Now I think they'd probably see Pokemon. Dollars. Well, and that's one of the things about clouds. What we see maybe is telling us something about ourselves, what we're thinking of, what's on our mind. And have you ever noticed that two people can look at the same clouds and see two different things? Somebody sees a bunny, somebody else sees a vicious dragon, or a bear or something. And you can be looking at the clouds, and the upper level winds are moving them, sometimes slowly, sometimes quickly, and that bunny turns into a horse, or that pony turns into a dragon, or the fairy tale castle turns into a factory that's belching smoke. And sometimes it just is what it is, and sometimes it's because maybe we're thinking about something. And I'm waiting. How much of this did I already cover? Let me check. So it's all about our perspective. Your external view often about anything has so much to do about your own attitude toward life. I've been in places in stores or something, and somebody is getting so irritated about this is just not right. And so I'm like, well, and obviously they were already irritated when they got there, or they're, maybe they've worked in stores and this is the way, I don't know, but they have a different perspective than I do about a credit card not working in the machine or something. So our external ideas come from our internal viewpoints, and that's how clouds can kind of maybe expand our imagination and our wondering and our thinking about what we're seeing when we see one. Someone who is deeply religious might see symbols of their religion. And I have seen posted on Facebook, there's Jesus in the clouds, there's the Virgin Mary, there's the Madonna and Child, And that's, somebody who's thinking about Jesus, and that's what they're seeing. And it just left my brain. One time I saw something. Oh, someone from Great Britain posted a cloud. It was the Cloud Society. Who does this look like? And somebody, before I could even say it, there was already somebody who responded, well, if you're American, that looks like Abraham Lincoln. And by golly, it did. That's Abraham Lincoln. Oh, she's British. Maybe she doesn't know what Abraham Lincoln, but he's on our $5 bill. Everybody knows what Abraham Lincoln looks like. So it was Abraham Lincoln. The beard, the prominent forehead, the big nose, everything was Abraham Lincoln. So it's all about, your life experience. She did not see pictures of Abraham Lincoln in her schoolroom or on her $5 bill and penny everywhere she went. Now, if it looked like the Queen, she would have known that. So it's worth pondering when we look at the stars, why we're seeing what we see. Is it the Spirit guiding the winds to make it into something we need to see right now, or something to get us thinking? Or are we in need of going inward and contemplating, now why am I seeing this dragon in the sky? Somebody else thinks that looks like a unicorn, but I'm seeing a dragon spitting fire. I wonder why. So clouds can help us think about what's going on inside. And sometimes, right before our eyes, that bunny can turn into a dinosaur. But what we see in them can help us explore our inner spirits and our desires and needs. Maybe you saw hearts because you needed to feel the love. That's a part of it. And we can contemplate that. I would love to do sometime, and I don't know what Corey has planned for the meditation, but I would love, when we get back to an open, grassy place, just lay down and do cloud meditation. Just watch the clouds go by and think about them. Or not think. Fall asleep watching the clouds, maybe. So there is a cloud phenomenon that you're probably familiar with, and it always fills me still, after all these years, no matter how jaded I've become, when I see this, I still feel awe and a sense of hope. And it's the God light. You know, you've got some dark, thick clouds, but a hole just happens to form in the right spot so the rays of the sun can come through. Sometimes they're going straight down, and I wonder, what's happening in that spot, in the spotlight? Sometimes they're at an angle, depending on where the sun is. And when the beams of sunlight streak through those dark clouds, I feel hope again. Yes, even on the darkest days, the sun is still there. The sun is shining, even when we can't see it. The sun is always shining somewhere in the world, providing us with all the energy we actually need. All the energy we need, even now with our modern technology. If we put out enough solar panels over every parking lot in this place, we would have enough power to fuel everything. And it has always given the earth all the energy it needed, and it's still there, still doing its job. The storm is beginning to break up. We see that big hole. We see the light, so we know the storm is breaking up and will come to an end sometime. And that's a message I need to take on board, because, you know, these years right now, they can't last forever. And there may be other storms, but they too will not last forever. The sun will, at least forever, as from our perspective. Forever until we're no longer around, the sun will still be here. And that's how I know that our present social and spiritual and practical storms will come to an end sometime. And the light of life is still shining. It is always shining somewhere, even when we can't see it. Now, I can't finish talking about clouds without mentioning the environment, which Barb touched on as well. Storms are getting worse. So on the environmental side of clouds, we can look to the sky for hope and wonder, but we can also see in the clouds signs of warning and caution. There are signs of the present time in the skies. Scientists tell us the earth is warming, storms are getting worse, but it's also just generally more cloudy than it has been in the past 60 years. And that's helping to increase global warming. And this, at least 60 years since they had satellites to be able to look down and measure the cloudiness of the earth. And the cloudiness, of course, adds to the warming. Melting ice caps, more rain in some places, rising sea levels, less rain in other places because it's changed the weather around in some cases, and lots of flooding, more flooding, like we saw in Texas. Oh, that's a mosquito. So the cloudiness is not just about carbon emissions. It's due to more particulates in the air because it's those little tiny dust particles that the condensation gathers around. And it gets heavier, so it can't just keep rolling around in that cycle. It starts to fall because of all the particles that we have pumped into our air. And these particles are produced by factories, burning coal especially, wildfires, huge dust storms that are becoming more frequent as well, and also volcanic eruptions and things like that. Now, we can't really do anything about volcanic eruptions. They're going to happen, and they're going to make an impact on the weather when they do. And it's hard to control dust storms other than to cool the earth a little and help that. But in the 70s and 80s, now I get a little hot about this, people worked so hard to enact laws, to make factories put scrubbers and filters on their smokestacks, to reduce emissions from automobiles and all sorts of things that burned all sorts of fuel. And we've been trying to reduce the size and frequency of wildfires, but they still seem to be getting worse. Now, with the environmental regulations being rolled back and the EPA is being stripped and gutted, all for the sake of the almighty dollar, we need to read these signs in our sky, the worsening storms, the increased cloudiness. And we need to act for the transformation of attitudes, first of all, the transformation of people's will. Our Earth, sky, planet is the only home we have, and we need to care for all of it, for restoration of the balance that we need for life, the balance that our Creator established from the beginning. So be it.
I do always find closing my eyes to be helpful, but sometimes others don't, and they want to look out at something or just stare downward at the ground. So find a gentle gaze or close your eyes. And this week, as we've been getting ready to talk about clouds, I have been looking up more and paying more attention to those signals in our sky. And I also came across a really powerful suggestion online where this, I don't know who it was, but this very smart person said, one of my mindful practices is to try to move 10% slower. Is that really possible? I don't know, right? That's what he said. Exactly 10%. Who knows what that specifically means? But as we are moving through life, his recommendation was to think about moving 10% slower. So I'm going to invite you to breathe 10% slower. And as I've been considering this invitation to slowing 10%, it made me think of the clouds and how, from our perspective on the ground, the winds might be moving quite fast in the sky, but as we see the clouds move, they appear to be floating softly and gently, a slow parade across our sky. And so as we take a moment to breathe this gift of air 10% slower than we were before, I also want to invite us to imagine our thoughts like the clouds, entering our mind and slowly moving through and floating past. So we're breathing and we're allowing our thoughts to float through like the clouds. And as we watch those thoughts or experience those things moving slowly through our mind, we can learn from that slow floating movement. We can move our bodies in that same slow flowing way. And I have found, as I move my body 10% slower, my mind follows. The racing thoughts slow. And the body then feels 10% softer. The tension billows away. As we continue to breathe, remind yourself of this feeling, this slowness, this softness, and know that you can bring yourself back to this slow softness anytime you need it. As we practice this through our daily lives, we may find we are having to remind ourselves to slow down and to soften over and over again. And the great ancestors of our faith would say, that is one more time you get to welcome the Spirit. One more time you get to become present again to this moment. Every time you bring awareness to a slower, softer pace, you bring yourself again into awareness of the Spirit. So remember, these reminders for yourself are a positive thing. And the more you do them, the better it is. The more you return to that life force, the Spirit within. So now we've had a chance to breathe and think like the clouds. Going to invite you to bring some gentle awareness back to this place, this present moment, some gentle movement, and to begin to slowly open your eyes and remember this invitation to think and move like the clouds is always there for you to receive and accept. So try this week to remind yourself you don't have to rush around like a squirrel or a chipmunk or an ant, that you can move like the clouds. And that will, or a hot air balloon, yeah. Float away. Thanks for sharing that time with me.